I get it standing in front of a stack of metal scrap and wondering if that shiny new plasma cutter you saw online is really worth the cash. Feels a lot like deciding whether to bring a stranger home for dinner. You're weighing the risk of spending money on a tool that might sit idle, and the anxiety of ending up with a machine that can't cut through the thickness you need or that fumbles on the first try. That hesitation is exactly what I felt last month when I was hunting for a beginner-friendly cutter that wouldn't scream for a professional workshop, yet could still handle a decent 12mm plate for my DIY car projects. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So I dug into the PLC 55/65 from Plasmargon. The first thing that stood out was how the package is set up right out of the box. Inside the box you get the inverter unit, a handheld torch, a set of interchangeable nozzles, a grounding clamp, and even a small set of safety glasses. For someone who's never owned a plasma cutter, that comprehensive package removes the guesswork of hunting down separate accessories, which can quickly add up to a few $100s. It also means you can start a cut within half an hour of opening the crate, rather than spending a day piecing together a makeshift setup. Who should really consider this machine? If you're a hobbyist who does occasional metal art, repairs bike frames, or cuts brackets for a homegrown furniture line, the PLC 55/65 hits a sweet spot. Its 50A version is comfortable for thin sheet work. Think 12mm steel for decorative panels, while the 60A upgrade pushes you into the 68mm range without needing a massive power supply. The inverter runs off a standard 110120V outlet, so you don't have to rewire your garage or install a dedicated 240V circuit, which is a common stumbling block for beginners. If you're a full-time fabricator with a dedicated shop, the cutter can still be useful, but you'll quickly notice that the duty cycle, about 10 minutes of continuous cut before a cool-down period, limits its suitability for high-volume production. In that case, a higher-end, industrial-rated cutter would be a better investment. Now, let's talk about what actually works well in everyday use. The first practical strength is the high-quality performance that Plasmargon advertises, and it lives up to that claim in a noticeable way. The IGBT CNC controller provides a steady arc that doesn't sputter when you slow down or speed up the torch. I tested it on a 4mm cold-rolled steel sheet for a custom bike frame bracket, and the cut edge was clean enough that I only needed a light filing, not a grind. That level of precision matters when you're trying to keep tolerances tight without spending extra hours on post-cut cleanup. Another point that often gets lost in the hype is the extended service life. The unit's cooling fan runs quietly but effectively, and after 3 weeks of intermittent use, about an hour a day, the machine showed no signs of overheating, and the consumables, the nozzle and electrode, still looked fresh. For a beginner's budget, that durability translates into fewer replacement parts and lower long-term costs. The versatile compatibility also holds up. The torch accepts both standard and fine-cut nozzles, so you can switch from rough cuts on a 10mm pipe to delicate engravings on thin aluminum without swapping the whole unit. I appreciated being able to drop in a fine-cut nozzle for a decorative pattern on a metal sign and then snap back to a larger nozzle for a quick sheet metal cut. On the flip side, there are a few practical weaknesses you'll notice once you start using the cutter in real projects. First, the user-friendly design does a good job of simplifying the controls. Just a knob for amperage and a foot pedal for start/stop, but the lack of a digital readout means you're estimating the arc current by feel. If you need exact amperage for thin aluminum, you might end up guessing a bit and get a rough edge, which can be frustrating for precision work. Second, the duty cycle limitation I mentioned earlier can bite you when you're on a roll. I was cutting a series of 8mm steel brackets for a garden gate, and after about 8 minutes of steady cutting, the machine warned me to let it cool. That pause interrupts workflow and can be a nuisance if you're trying to finish a project in one sitting. Another nuance is the power requirement. While the cutter runs on standard household voltage, it draws close to the maximum current your typical home circuit can safely provide. If you have several other tools on the same line like a grinder or a drill, you might trip the breaker during a longer cut. The solution is simple: dedicate a separate circuit or run the cutter when other hydraulic tools are off, but that adds a small layer of planning you didn't anticipate when you first saw the price tag. So, should you buy it? If you're a DIY enthusiast who needs a reliable, plug-and-play cutter for occasional projects, the PLC 55 of 65